There are vegetables that grow because we help them. And then there are vegetables that grow because they were designed to survive. Long before seed catalogs, fertilizers, and instructions printed on packets, people depended on plants that didn't fail easily. These were vegetables that endured heat, cold, poor soil, neglect, and time itself. Today, we're continuing that journey here on Golden Garden Vault, uncovering vegetables that fed civilizations, survived harsh conditions, and quietly disappeared from modern gardens, not because they stopped working, but because we stopped paying attention. Before we begin, if you appreciate calm, thoughtful gardening and food that grows with less effort, take a moment to subscribe. This channel is for gardeners who value resilience over trends. Now let's continue, and as before, I'll clearly guide you from one vegetable to the next. The next vegetable you need to know, Alexanders. Let's begin with a plant that fed Europe long before celery ever existed. Alexanders was once a common garden vegetable, not an herb. Every part of the plant was eaten: leaves, stems, roots, flower buds, and seeds. The flavor is stronger and richer than celery, more assertive, more satisfying. It grows happily in partial shade, tolerates poor soil, and reseeds itself once established. Old gardeners valued it because it gave food early in the season when fresh vegetables were scarce. Celery replaced Alexanders not because it was better, but because it was milder. In choosing softness, we lost strength. Now let's move to the next vegetable, patience stock. The next vegetable earned its name honestly. Patience stock, sometimes called patience sorrel, is a perennial green that returns every spring without fail. It produces large, lemony leaves early in the season, often before anything else is ready to harvest. Its deep roots break up compacted soil and pull minerals upward, enriching the ground around it. It tolerates cold, heat, shade, sun, and neglect. Old gardeners trusted patience stock because it showed up every year, quietly providing nourishment when it was needed most. The next vegetable, Orache. Now let's talk about a plant that once outperformed spinach across Europe. Orache, sometimes called mountain spinach, grows tall, often reaching 6 feet, and keeps producing leaves all summer long without bolting. It thrives in heat where spinach fails. Red, green, and golden varieties make it beautiful enough to be ornamental, yet productive enough to feed families. And once you grow it, you rarely need to plant it again. It reseeds itself generously. Spinach became popular because it was softer. Orache was abandoned because it was stronger. Moving on, Rampion. The next vegetable carries history, legend, and patience in equal measure. Rampion is the plant behind the Rapunzel fairy tale. In medieval Europe, people valued its tender roots and slightly bitter leaves so much that garden theft became a serious problem. It prefers cool weather and partial shade. The roots are best harvested young, and the leaves can be harvested gradually if treated gently. Rampion reminds us that food once held cultural importance, not just calories, but story. Now let's talk about Arracacha. Next, we move from Europe to South America. Arracacha was second only to potatoes in the Inca Empire. It produces creamy roots with a flavor that blends carrot, celery, and chestnut into something entirely its own. Pests ignore it. Poor soil doesn't discourage it. And once harvested, the roots cook into something comforting, filling, and deeply nourishing. Arracacha didn't disappear because it failed. It disappeared because European crops replaced local knowledge.
The next vegetable, earth chestnut, also known as apios or groundnut. Now we come to one of North America's most overlooked native food plants. Earth chestnut, also called apios or groundnut, is a perennial vine that produces chains of protein-rich tubers underground. Unlike most root crops, it fixes nitrogen, improving the soil as it grows. It thrives in wet soil, shade, poor ground, and complete neglect. Indigenous people relied on it for centuries because it returned every year stronger than before. Food that feeds you and your soil is rare. Apios did both. Let's move on to lovage. The next plant may surprise you. Lovage is often labeled an herb, but historically it was grown as a vegetable. Leaves, stems, roots, and seeds are all edible, and one plant can provide harvests for up to 8 months of the year. It grows tall, sometimes over 6 feet, and becomes more productive every season. It tolerates cold, shade, poor soil, and neglect. One lovage plant can replace an entire row of celery, with less effort and more flavor. Now we arrive at oca. Next is a vegetable that brings color and generosity to the garden. Oca produces jewel-toned tubers in shades of red, pink, yellow, and purple. The plants themselves look like clover and are surprisingly ornamental. Oca resists pests, grows easily, and produces heavily in cool autumn weather. In some countries, it grows so freely it's considered invasive. It asks for patience, but rewards it richly. The next vegetable, Yacon. Now let's talk about a vegetable that quietly supports health as well as harvest. Yacon produces crisp, juicy tubers that taste like a cross between apples and jicama. They're naturally sweet, low in calories, and rich in prebiotic fiber. The plant grows tall like a sunflower and requires very little attention. The tubers store well and actually become sweeter over time. Yacon is proof that forgotten doesn't mean inferior. Sometimes it means ahead of its time. The final vegetable, Ulluco. We end with a true survivor. Ulluco was grown high in the Andes, often in volcanic soil, at elevations where most crops would fail completely. And yet it produced reliable harvests for thousands of years. Its tubers are brightly colored, disease-resistant, and long-storing. Even the leaves are edible. When you dig up Ulluco, it feels like uncovering buried treasure. Each tuber unique, resilient, and beautiful. If any vegetable represents everything we've talked about, it's this one. These vegetables didn't need improvement. They needed remembering. They fed families, healed soil, and survived when conditions were harsh. And they're still here, waiting for gardeners willing to grow with nature instead of against it. Choose a few, plant them, and watch how much easier gardening becomes when you stop fighting plants that were never meant to struggle. If you enjoyed this series, like the video, leave a comment telling me which vegetable surprised you most, and subscribe to Golden Garden Vault for more forgotten wisdom brought back to life. Until next time, grow patiently, grow wisely, and remember, the strongest gardens are built on plants that were never meant to fail.